Hello and welcome to this presentation. In the following minutes, we will go through the most important features that are available on this application for analyzing United Nations General Assembly resolutions. So, to start with, let us consider a scenario where we'd like to study resolutions that are associated to the topic of human rights. So we can enter these terms on the relevant search field, and we will see that as we do so, the number of relevant resolutions gets updated accordingly, and so does the list of results that we can see on this table. But we will go back to this in a minute. Now let's add a few more filters to this selection. So when it comes to date, maybe we might be interested in seeing only the resolutions that have been passed from a particular year onwards. So we can set that 1980s is the minimum year for which we would like resolutions. And we can also put a maximum year here with the slider. So we have a threshold. In addition, we might want to filter resolutions depending on the way specific countries have voted. So for example, let's say we'd like to see only those resolutions where Russia has voted affirmatively on this topic and simultaneously the United States has voted negatively. So we start typing the country names and then we will get some input help to choose the value from this. Similarly, we might want to have only resolutions where Canada has voted or has abstained from voting in particular. So all of these are evaluated all together. All the conditions need to be met in a simultaneous way. So we will see that as we add more and more filters, the number of relevant resolutions gets reduced as well. We can add some filters by the number of votes. For example, we can set a filter to the number of positive votes, negative votes, abstentions, and also the number of countries who did not participate in this votation in spite of the fact that they were eligible to do so. And in the same vein as we can do that with number of votes, we can also do that with proportions. So for example, we can say that we would like to see only resolutions that were passed with at least a majority of 60%. We can add any range for any of the types of votes. So this is again further restricting results. By default, we will see 5 resolutions per page. We can move to the next page by clicking on the next button. So we go to results 6 to 10 out of 64. We can go to the last page with this button. So we will see the bottom of the table here. And we can go back to the first page of results where we have the initial rows. So we can change the number of resolutions that we see per page by changing this option. So we can move to number of resolutions of 10 or 25, for instance. So here we see 10 resolutions in one go. But let's go back to the original setting, and for the time being we will take the filters that we have already set. So we can minimize the selection screen, but if in the meantime we want to change this, we can again maximize what we have minimized and then apply additional filters or change what we have done. So this result set by default is sorted by date and resolution, both in a descending order. But if I click on other fields, for example, approval, I am shifting this sorting criteria to approval field in an ascending order. So we see resolutions with the lowest levels of approval first. If I click again on the icon, then I have an descending order. So in this case, we have at the bottom, at the top part of the table, we have resolutions with the highest levels of approval. But let's go back to the original setting of dates in descending order. And if we press Shift key in our keyboard while clicking with the mouse on this field, then we will be adding resolutions as a second sort criteria. We are not changing date by resolution, but we will have date and resolution. So if two resolutions have the same date, then resolution will be an additional criteria to set the final order for resolutions on this table. So we will now see how we can see further details for resolutions, either as individual resolutions, which happens on the votes map, the votes details, the details screen and keywords screen. We see one resolution at a time, and then in affinity matrix and ad hoc analysis we will see resolutions as a group. So these 64 resolutions that meet all the criteria that we have specified before will be treated as a group, as a whole, and we will see the details for them in one go. So let's start with the former group, where we see only one resolution at a time. So let's click on one resolution, and then we see here which resolution has been chosen, which is this one. And then here we have a map with the detail of votes per country. So countries voted affirmatively will be colored in blue, as is the case of Russia, and we knew this because we applied a filter at the very beginning to only consider resolutions where this was happening. We see countries voting negatively as the UK and the United States, and they are colored in red. By the way, if you look at the bottom left hand side of the screen, you will see that as I put the pointer on different countries, I see the name of the country and how this country has voted for this resolution that has been selected. And finally, we have orange color for abstentions and dark gray for countries who did not participate in this votation. If we want to see further details about votations, we can go to the second tab, which shows us which countries have voted affirmatively. So we see all the country names, and we also see the number of votes that were on this category and also the percentage it represents over the total. Similarly, we can see the same for negative votes, abstentions, countries who did not participate, and not eligible countries if there was any. In the third tab, we can see some details about the content of the resolution. So here at the bottom, we have some key text fragments from the content of the resolution, and in particular, the terms that we have specified as search criteria are highlighted with bold. So we were looking for human rights resolution, so every time we have human or rights words, they will be highlighted. So with this small subset of fragments from the text of the resolution, we can have a high-level picture of what the resolution is about in most cases. However, if we want to see the content of the resolution, we can click on this Open Resolution Text button, which will open a separate browser window and will connect to the United Nations website to retrieve the resolution text in PDF format. So here we can see all the details about this resolution that was passed by the General Assembly. If we close this window and go back to the application, then we also have the option to open the press release, which will also connect to the United Nations website to see these contents. So here we can have some additional details of this session where maybe multiple resolutions were passed, and we can also see some high-level details of the positions of each country. So if we close and go back, there is a third option which is related to the meeting minute. In this particular case it is disabled, but for resolutions where it is available, we will also have the chance to open the meeting minute, which is also retrieved from United Nations website in a PDF format. As far as content is concerned, we also have the fourth panel or the fourth tab, where we can see a word cloud where the most important terms are highlighted, not only in terms of coloring but also in terms of size. So highlighted terms will appear bigger, and this will represent the terms that appear more frequently in the text of the resolution. So this also gives us some high-level perspective of what this resolution is about without opening the text. So these four tabs, as I said before, are related to single resolutions. So we see resolution 192 from the 71st session, and if I move to another, this will be updated accordingly. The same happens with the details, where I can see the different fragments. Here, for example, I can see also a link for this resolution to open the meeting minute, which is what I was mentioning before. Let's have a look at it. So this is the meeting minute, which shows all the contents of the discussion that allowed the assembly to reach the text of the resolution. So we can see more details about how each country opinates on a particular topic at a given point in time. Then we have also the same for vote details. No, we can browse through the different resolutions and see both the vote details and the votes map to have a look. So now let's move on to the analysis where groups of resolutions are considered as opposed to single resolutions. And this happens, for example, with affinity matrix. And here there is a pre-selection that is done at country level. By default, we will have the group of 20 or G20 countries, but as we will see later, we can change this. So this matrix compares the countries that appear on this list to each other and will tell us how many coincidences in votes there were and how many mismatches there were. So if two countries voted in the same manner, they both voted affirmatively or they both voted negatively or both of them abstained, then we say that there is a coincidence. Otherwise, there is a mismatch. So if two countries, a pair of countries, so let's say for example Australia and China, here the column is China, the row is Australia, here we see a dark color which is almost black. So this indicates that there were scarce or inexistent coincidences between these two countries. They almost never voted in the same manner. But if we see lighter colors, like for example India and Argentina, we will see that there were some coincidences. The lighter the color is, the more coincidences there were. So initially, this matrix is sorted in an alphabetic order, but we can change this to coincidences order. So after the animation plays, we will see this sorted list where the highest level of coincidences are shown on the bottom left corner, whereas if we go to the right or towards the bottom, then we will see the the lower level of coincidences. So as we have mentioned, we have the group of 20, so G20 countries. But can we add or remove countries from this list? Yes, we can. So for example, let's say I would like to remove United States and United Kingdom. So we can remove either by clicking on the X icons or by using backspace. And in the same vein as I can add, I can also, in the same vein as I can remove, I can also add. So for example, let's say I would like to add Uruguay. So I start typing the country name, and as it happened before with the filters, I will have an input help. Uruguay has been added, and if I check here, it appears here on the list. So I can also see how Uruguay has performed. I can also add, for example, Switzerland. So here we can customize the list according to the needs of analysis. We can also select from a predefined set of countries. So we have different groups of countries we can choose from. So initially we have a group of 20. For example, we can check also Pacific Alliance, UNASUR, NAFTA, Mercosur, group of 7, group of 20, European Union, Andean Community, and so on. So if we click on European Union, automatically the list of countries that are part of the European bloc will be chosen, and we will be able to see the coincidences here. So we have very actually we have no dark cells on this matrix, which shows us that for this particular topic of human rights, the European bloc is aligned in political terms, and they tend to vote in a similar fashion. So let's move on to the final tab, which is related to ad hoc analysis. And this allows us to prepare custom reports. So this is very similar to what happens in business intelligence applications, where we can drag and drop fields to the rows area, to the columns area, or we can change the results that we are seeing. So we have different aggregative functions like summing, counting, having maximums, minimums, averages, and we can do that for different fields. So we can do that for the number of affirmative votes, also for negative votes, for abstentions, for the number of countries that were not participating, or even the number of countries that were not eligible. So here in the initial screen, we will have the sum of affirmative votes with a granularity by decade. So we can see how many positive votes we had on each decade, only for the 64 resolutions that have been chosen here, of course. So let's say that we'd like to customize this and have some granularity by country, because for the time being all countries are being grouped all together. So we can drag and drop country field to rows area, but we cannot see all countries in one go because we have almost 200 cases in the latest sessions of the United Nations General Assembly. So we can click on this field, we can deselect the list of all countries, and then we can add some particular countries. So let's say we are interested, for example, in United States, United Kingdom, and United Arab Emirates. So we apply this filter, and we can see here one series for each country in one color. So the US didn't have any positive votes on any of these human rights topics. And actually, we set that filter. No, we set a filter that determines that the US was expected to vote negatively, so that should not be a surprise. So if we go to the number of negative votes, we will see that the United States was always voting negatively. But we can also change, for example, the dimension, the time dimension granularity. So at present we have decade, but we can remove this and we can add the year as part of the granularity. So we see this to a lower level. Instead of decades, we see years. And we can also change the visualization type. So if we, for example, go to table and we remove the filter by country, we select all again, we can see a table with these results. And we can see a heat map that shows us where the highest levels of affirmative votes were recorded. And there are many visualization options that allowed us to deliver the different needs of analysis according to each situation. So with this, we conclude this presentation.